Hey everybody, welcome back to your 35th PHP tutorial. This video I want to talk about functions. So if you like it, please be sure to subscribe. And if you don't like it, please be sure to click like. Alright, thank you. Let's begin. Alright, so what is a function? You may have heard of either the term function or method. Well, a method is pretty much the same thing as a function, but in object-oriented programming, such as JavaScript or Java. So, PHP is a procedural programming language. So it's not object-oriented programming language. So we don't have methods. Or, well, okay, technically you can use PHP either as a procedural language or an object-oriented programming language. But right now, we're using it as a procedural language. And if you really don't know what that means, don't even worry about it. Just follow along. So, if you just think method, function. Alright, so if you've never heard of a method, don't worry about it. That's just for you other people who may have heard about it. Alright, so what does a function do? Well, a function takes some given value and does something with it. Okay, so I like to think of it like this. This is a function. Alright? I like to think of it as a tunnel. Alrighty? So we give it a value or values. It does something with those values. And then we get back a new value. That is the basics of how a function works. We have used some functions already. I can't think of ones we've used, but I know we have, because I was like, I know we haven't talked about functions yet. And now we're finally talking about functions. But, oh yeah, I know one. The array function. So let's do an example of the array function. These are parentheses. When we put these after a word, like this, we're calling the function. That means it's going to do its thing. So here is the array tunnel. And then we put a value in it, and it gives us a value back. So what we put in here is a list of values separated by commas. So we could have yo, and so forth. I can't think of any. Whoa, a piece of chalk was like rolling down the... Oh, anyways. Now it's going to give us back an array where each one of these values has an index and is a key value pair within an array, and whatever we can name it by assigning it to a variable. So pi is equal to the return value of array. So that means this value that comes out is assigned to the variable pi. That is a function we have used. There is a multitude of other functions you will use. Like seriously, there's a ton. So a lot of these are going to be reference rather than memorization, because all of them are used a little bit differently, and it's kind of hard to memorize them all. So if you can't memorize them all, that's okay. It doesn't mean you're a noob, because then I'd be like a major noob, because I know like barely any. In fact, I don't even know one. That one, that's not even real. I just made it up. No, I'm kidding. It'd be pretty awesome though. Oh my gosh, what if I just made up this whole series and like none of this was even true? That'd be hilarious. Alright, anyways, sometimes when we call a function, so let's just say function x. Let's just say that's a function. We call it by putting the parentheses, and then we put a semicolon. This is going to do the junk within the function. It does not always require something within the parentheses. When it does, we have specific terms for what those are. Alright, so we would put in what's known as an argument, and you may also hear the term parameter. And for the longest time, I did not know the difference between these two terms, but as we go in this video and in the next video, we will understand the difference between these two terms perfectly. But as for now, that doesn't really matter. All you need to know is sometimes it'll take in information, other times it will not. Okay. The cool thing about functions is we can have what's known as a user-defined function. So just like with arrays, we could create our own arrays, but we can also create our own functions. So for example, the function array was not user-defined, it was predefined because we did not create it. All we did was call it. So when you see this right here, this is known as calling the function. That means it's going to do the code that the function is programmed to do. Alright, so now let's talk about creating functions. Well, the first thing is, obviously it's going to need a name. So the name consists, well, it can have, what was I going to write? Alright, I don't know. But it can have letters, underscores, and numbers. The only other rule is, well, there's a couple other rules, but you cannot start with a number. You can only use a number after you started with a letter, for example L, or an underscore. So those are one rule. Those are the basic rules. Another thing is you cannot use a predefined term in PHP. So you couldn't name your function echo, because echo is already used within PHP. It's a, what's the word? Reserved word. Wow, literally as soon as I stopped the camera, I remembered it. I think that's the word. Anyways, those are the basic naming rules. Now, what would we use a function for? Or why would we create a function? Well, the very first reason, I mean, these aren't like exact, I mean, you can use it for whatever you want, but most commonly, the very first reason is for repeating code. I love this new chalk. I feel like I could write so much better. And also, I don't know how to spell this, so just bear with me. Separating, either that or separating. I think that's right. Separating complex code. So, repeating code, if you just create the function once, so let's say the function itself is 50 lines, then when you call it, you only have to use one line. So if you use the same code 10 times, rather than having 500 lines, you could have 50, then call it 10 times to get 60 lines. Hopefully that makes sense. Basically, it's less code reuse. You can create the function and then use it multiple different times. So let's say you have a value, you put it through a function, and then you get a new value, like this. Well, you could do that with multiple values throughout the program. Rather than this, if you didn't use functions, you would have to program itself, and then what you get is the same thing repeated on here twice. And that is a waste of space and extra lines, so oftentimes it's used for repeating code. Another thing is for separating complex code. So, rather than always typing a complex system right then and there, you can make a complex system over here, So this is a complex, crazy program, and then all you have to do is reference it. Very simple. And you can reference it multiple different times. And as you can see, all these little boxes are very simple. Very simple. This, I don't really want to work with that 50 times. So if it's super complex, I might just put it in its own function and then use that function as the program goes on. Right, so that is all I have to say in this video. In the next video, I'm actually going to be teaching you how to create the functions and be going over the two terms, argument and parameter, and probably some other junk. So please be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.